Love is in the air. Noble Knight is back again. And this time they've got a brand new coupon code for the month of February. Hey everybody, it's your old buddy Hambone, and Noble Knight has reached out and they've thrown another amazing discount code our way. This time the code is Love to Play. That is LOVETOPLAY. And it is good for $5 off any order of $25 or more, running from February the 3rd through February the 29th. Now, our friends over at Noble Knight are absolutely amazing. And whether you are there to buy some RPGs, whether you're going to buy some classic games, board games, card games, dice games, Noble Knight's going to have what you're looking for. Now, this code is good for in-store or online, so you get the best of both worlds. If you're shopping online, this is a good way to get yourself $5 off an order of $25 or more. Or if you're lucky enough to live in walking distance or even driving distance, you can walk on up to the counter and use the code Love to Play to get $5 off any order of $25 or more. Now that is LOVETOPLAY, and this code is good from February 3rd to February 29th. So don't forget to use the code Love to Play at checkout at Noble Knight Games, and may the dice always roll in your favor.
This is the Vintage RPG Podcast, your source for the best in classic and contemporary RPGs. With your hosts, Hambone and Stu.
Welcome to the Vintage RPG Podcast, coming at you again from the clubhouse hidden somewhere in the swamps of New Jersey. I'm John Hambone McGuire, and with me, as always, is the editor-in-chief of Unwinnable.com. I asked him about his Desert Island discs, and 3 of them were Sisters of Mercy, Stu Horvath.
It's true, and that's basically it. That's all the Sisters of Mercy you need, is the 3 albums.
Yeah. And the other 2 are Iron Maiden,
Yeah.
and something by Warren Zevon.
I feel like I could just sing the Warren Zevon songs to myself.
It's true, and your coconut friend.
Yeah.
So how's it going today, Stu?
It's going well. I'm not marooned on a desert island, so.
This is very true. What are we talking about today?
Well, it's funny that you bring up desert islands because we're talking about what may be my favorite Dungeons & Dragons module, Isle of Dread.
Nice.
Yeah. Now, you'll note that I often say that there are modules that might be my favorite Dungeons & Dragons module because there's a lot that I really love. But this one is really, 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 really high up on the list. My first Dungeons & Dragons product might have been the expert set, the blue box expert set. I just skipped right past basic. You know, I was gifted and talented in school.
There you go.
know.
Yeah, rub it in. Yeah.
All it got me was the SATs early. Like, what kind of reward is that?
Yeah, but
Standardized tests.
Shh, you don't want the kids to find that out. Got to keep them hoping for something that's not going to ever happen.
I guess, yeah, I did get like a weird class once in a while where we would just watch movies.
Yeah, see, I always thought the talented and gifted kids just got like the first pick in the bookmobile.
We might have had special bookmobile privileges.
A kid can dream, right?
Yeah. You got to understand that I kind of think of our educational system as a crock. So, like, me being singled out as gifted and talented is like the biggest joke in the world. Anyway.
So tell us about Isles of Dread.
So I had the expert set, and there's a couple Dragon magazines, Monster Manual 2 and the expert set were all like bought around the same time, and I don't really remember which one I got first. I do know that I conned my father's mother, my grandmother, into buying it for me on a jaunt to the mall to shut me up. I was being a real pest, and I know that my parents didn't want me to have D&D, so I got grandma to do it. It was the only good thing that woman ever did. And just like dishing the real talk today.
Wow. He's wearing saucy pants.
Yeah. Anyway, so the expert set, one of my first real big entries into the world of role-playing games. And like, because I was a kid and I didn't have any disposable income to really do it myself, like I got stuck with that box for a long time. And that meant I read the included module, which was X1, Isle of Dread, over and over and over again, which is a bummer because that means that I've never played it.
Oh, yeah.
But it's also kind of cool because I feel like I know this module better than any other D&D module, and it's a great one on its own merits, taking my nostalgia out of it.
Well, in a way, it's kind of like when you have the movie where the guy gets stranded on the island and he has to kind of go through all the different challenges himself solo and figure out how he would overcome them, or she, to get past everything that, they're dealing with and everything that the island is throwing at you.
It's true, yeah.
So in a lot of ways, you never actually being able to play this module only means that you've run every possible scenario that a player could throw at you in your head already, because now you've been sitting on this for what, like 30-something years?
Easily, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you are the ultimate survivor on the island.
Yeah. Isle of Dread, class of 84 or something. That was not even a joke. Jesus.
Yeah. We're punchy tonight.
Yeah. Whew. So in addition to being included in the Blue Box expert set, it was also included in the older 81 Moldve expert set with the Arrow Lotus cover. And that's the older version, the 1980 version of the module, which I feel like this one is the one that people love because it's got the old school art, quote unquote old school art. So you got like the Jeff D cover, and you got like Willingham is all over this one, and I like it, but it's not the one that I had.
Okay.
And it also kind of has the slightly older approach to like typesetting and layout, which I don't necessarily love.
I agree.
Like, it has a certain special charm for me, but I feel like it hurts my eyes a little bit.
Oh, 100%. It's aesthetically pleasing insofar as you knew that's the best they could do for the time.
Yeah.
But man, it's a slog trying to read through it with that typeset.
It's miles better than the older stuff. Like Tomb of Horrors is almost practically typewritten, It's just like, oh. And again, I like that. I like the idea that there's all these old school RPG books out there that were literally just typewritten pages that were run off on a photocopier. Like, I love that.
Yeah, but my 40-year-old eyes loves really easy to read print much, much more.
Yeah, and it is funny how hard that typewriter font can really be on your eyes.
I don't even know if it's the font. It's the ink. And the ink kind of like aging and fading itself out of the paper,
yeah,
which makes it that much harder to distinctly enjoy.
Yeah, because there's like all those little pits and stuff.
Yep.
And yeah, I think that the Dungeons & Dragons basic line that was attached to the Frank Menser Beck Me stuff, I think that is probably the finest example of graphic design and layout that TSR ever really did. There's just something about it that it's like clean, it's like commercial enough, but it still kind of looks like something that amateurs put together.
It's the fine line between, commercial Top of the Pops and punk rock. Just that nice little happy medium. Like someone professionally made this as professionally as they could.
Yeah. There's little touches that I just appreciate. Like the trade dress is nice and consistent across the whole line. There's like all these little icons for each different chapter. And you've got Tim Truman doing all of the art, which I love me some Tim Truman. I just think that he's a fantastic artist. Right around this same time, of course, I was a little kid, and I was going to the ShopRite with my mom to get the groceries. I just learned that ShopRite is a Jersey thing.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know that.
I
thought that everybody had ShopRite.
No, it's just New Jersey.
Yeah. And it's a co-op, too. I didn't know that. Apparently, this was a question on Jeopardy recently. My mom was telling me about it. And she's like, and they didn't know. And I was like, well, this is all news to me, and I've lived here my whole life.
Yeah.
So one of the cool things about our local ShopRite was that they had like a pretty good magazine stand. I could get like Cracked or Mad. But what I wanted was the oversized Conan comic book magazine from Marvel Comics.
Oh, yeah.
And Tim Truman, I don't know if he was ever in it off the top of my head, but his art feels like it should have been if it wasn't. I loved those. They're so violent. There's skulls everywhere, and like...
You should have went there with your grandma. She would have bought it for you.
Yeah, no, Mom would get it for me. She didn't really care. It was weird where she drew the lines.
Right. Well, because no one ever said Conan was potentially satanic.
Yeah. It just made her nervous. Just a little bit. So I just love Timothy Truman. I think that he's of this moment. People kind of break the ages of D&D down into like broad moments, and I think that that's wrong, because like Tim Truman, like from 82 to 84 is D&D. He designed all those toys. He's just got his fingerprints all over it. And Isle of Dread is a big one because it was one of the most widely disseminated of the modules.
Yet his name doesn't come up as often as you'd think for someone who had their thumbprint on everything.
Yeah, because right at the same time, the big four are coming up. Tim Truman's got like his spotlight for a second, and then all of a sudden it's Caldwell, Easley, Elmore, and Parkinson, and they blow everybody out of the water and dominate for, a while. So Truman's sort of in this middle zone between like the old school greats like Otis and Willingham and Tramp, and then the big four. But I feel like it's a really distinct moment in time, and it's my favorite because it's kind of the stuff that was easily accessible to me when I got into the hobby. But I also think that it's also visually striking on its own merits. Nostalgia taints everything. It's like when your basement floods and that moisture just gets into everything and you gotta gut everything. But like you can't gut nostalgia.
No, and you kind of miss the smell when it's gone.
Yeah.
You're like, something just doesn't smell right anymore.
Yeah.
Where's the black mold?
Like I recognize that I'm probably coming from a nostalgia tainted position, but I do think that it's interesting and overlooked kind of moment in time for TSR.
So talk to me about the gameplay, because this is one that you've never gotten to play yourself, yet you've read cover to cover more times than you can count.
Oh, it's so good. So this is the first really big wilderness game that's basically just wilderness. Before this, the emphasis on Dungeons and Dragons has always been dungeons. It's in the name. And there's sort of like a formula that developed where it was like once all the rules were out, and you had the stuff for, overland combat and stuff. It was town section, wilderness section where you travel to the dungeon where the real stuff happens. And your wilderness is basically like a series of random encounters or whatever. This is like a fully formed hexcrawl wilderness campaign, and it's really one of the first and one of the best. The only other one, interestingly enough, this happens a lot, Chaosium, the same year as Isle of Dread, released Griffin Mountain, which is also a very large wilderness hexcrawl. And they're both very similar, where it's just like you go into it and you don't know anything. Isle of Dread has one thing over Griffin Mountain. It has the empty map, which I think is just the perfect visual summation of what I want out of D&D. I want you to hand me an empty map and say, fill this in. And you're going to do it, and you're going to like make notations about like what you find and like where people died. And it's like such a perfect encapsulation of the game, right?
Right, which is, hey, do it yourself, use your imagination.
I'm going to hold it up to you. And it's just so pretty.
Awesome.
It's so good.
And it's one of those things that when I got my copy years ago and just glancing through it, I never understood. I'm like, why is it missing so much stuff in the middle? I was like, maybe because this is me, very pretty. Maybe you're just meant to just stay outside in the area where it's all colored in. And like maybe that's like there's like a volcano or like something popping at the top of it. But once I realized that it was we're showing you the shoreline.
Yeah.
What happens in the middle, it's up to you.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
Yeah, and you get like a little bit of civilization on the outside, and you can like poke around the edges and have an idea of what's there. But to go into the interior of the isle, it means going into the unknown. It's saying like after this, like the old maps, here be dragons. Like you don't know what's there, and it's probably going to kill you.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I love the fact that the module does a very good job of setting up different factions in the region. You have the Kopru. They're like a weird amphibian race that live in the volcano, and like they love the heat. And then there's the Phanatons, which are like raccoon monkey people.
This is awesome.
Yeah, and there's the sentient spiders that hold weapons in their hands. And then there's humans, and there's so much. The Rakasta, which are like sort of like cat-like people. And like you have like a whole bunch of like factions on the island that all have different needs, wants, goals that you could kind of commit to helping, commit to trying to thwart, avoiding altogether. The Kopru obviously are the big bads. They live in a volcano. It's like,
yeah, that can't be allowed.
It doesn't get much more epic though. Like we're going to go to that volcano, and like it taps into like that Skull Island thing, King Kong.
Yeah.
And like there's just so much, like it works like a whole bunch of different pleasure buttons where it pushes them. It gets the endorphin rush going,
Yeah. It's like every great like piratey island adventure movie with dinosaurs that you could have ever seen just like thrown together.
Yeah. And like that's sort of my problem with the cover art. Like I love Jeff D. I think that he's a great artist, but like his T-Rex on the cover, it looks like a giant lizard man.
Yeah.
Whereas Tim Truman's T-Rex on the cover looks like a T-Rex.
Yeah.
And I get the King Kong thing. Like I want to go to a jungle island that's filled with mystery and ruins and dinosaurs. Like I want to fight dinosaurs.
Yeah.
And like I feel like because there's dragons and other more interesting monsters that nobody wants to fight a dinosaur in D&D.
It's a fair point.
But I love dinosaurs in D&D. I love dinosaurs in RuneQuest. I love the idea of I love dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are cool, man.
Yeah, a quick little digression here. I love that in the beginning of like King Kong, you see the dinosaur first and all the explorers like, oh crap. it's a dinosaur. We're effed.
Yeah.
And then the dinosaur gets its ass whipped by King Kong, and they're like,
Oh,
how wrong we were. We're really effed.
And this is the foundation of so many cool games. Like Tomb of Annihilation takes a page out of this. Like I said, Griffin Mountain was a parallel development, but like very similar. And when Avalon Hill gets the RuneQuest license, they redo it as an island, and they correct the mistake and put a blank map in it. And it's a cooler blank map because it has like notations of the previous owner on it. Like good. Such a good move. Like that's like so smart. And it's actually several owners, and some of the stuff is wrong. So it's like, oh, it's so... Like,
it's such a nice touch.
Yeah. And even, right up until today, most recently, Hot Springs Island by the Swordfish Islands fellows is a fantastic, one of the best hex crawls. And it's that same basic thing. There's a volcano. It's an island. There's jungle. There's ogres. There's factions. And it's just like all those dominoes are set up. And it's a wildly different game thematically and content-wise from Isle of Dread. But you can see the DNA from Isle of Dread in it. I love the idea of this sort of environment where you players go in and make a mess. Like it's a big old sandbox and somebody built up a whole bunch of cool model stuff in there, and like you're just going to traipse through it and like just wreak havoc.
Yeah.
And maybe get killed.
Yeah, we're here to wreck the joint.
Yeah.
And hopefully get rescued.
Yeah. And like some good could come out of it, some bad could come out of it, but like it's like so refreshing getting to like an Isle of Dread over like those tournament-based mods. Like Tomb of Horrors has its thing.
It's also a true dungeon crawl. You're kind of on the rails. They award you points for things. Like, you have to get to B from starting at A.
Yeah.
Whereas something like this, it's like, hey, man, like, it's groovy. There's not even a middle of the map.
Yeah.
Go nuts.
Yeah, I mean, dungeons are naturally constrictive spaces. So, like, they have to have, like, walls and predefined routes. With a hexcrawl, you don't have that. With Isle of Dread, you absolutely don't have that. You just have a big space to go into, backtrack, burn to the ground, whatever you want to do. There's consequences to your actions, but it's just wide open. It's the appeal of open world games and video games.
Absolutely.
Like, it gives you a bunch of toys to play with.
Don't tell me what I can't do.
Yeah, and I feel like this is, if not the first, the most important one of those in the early days of TSR and D&D. It's just so good because it's got giant dinosaurs in it.
You can't go wrong with giant dinosaurs. Stu, you have any final thoughts?
Isle of Dread is awesome, is my final thought. Like, if you haven't read it, you should pick it up or play it or get your DM to play it. I think that it's a good old-fashioned, could take up many, many sessions on its own, which is a real accomplishment for like a 32-page booklet.
Yeah, and I recommend trying to find a physical copy of it.
Yeah, it feels good in the hand. It looks good.
And also, you can draw on it, and you're going to need to.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I don't draw on it. Like, photocopy to print it. We have good printing technology. Like, don't destroy the past, folks.
All right, he's got a point there. It belongs in a museum. All right, well, this is another awesome episode of the Vintage RPG Podcast. Stu, where can the people find you?
They can find me every day on Instagram at Vintage RPG, posting things like the Isle of Dread module and talking about, dinosaurs and D&D and rolling dice.
These are a few of my favorite things. You can find me on the Twitter at Handbreaker. I tweet about Dungeons & Dragons. I tweet about cute animals. I tweet about professional wrestling. You can follow my day-to-day adventures in podcasting and in life over on Instagram at John Hambone McGuire. Definitely take a second and like, review, and subscribe to this podcast. When you do things like that, it really does help other listeners to find us. Tell your friends. And if you love the Vintage RPG Podcast, don't think twice about stopping by Patreon, patreon.com/vintagerpg. We post up unboxing videos. Stu posts up some amazing essays, and you will get these episodes a little bit early. So for Stu Horvath, I'm John Hambone McGuire. May the dice always roll in your favor.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Every review helps other listeners to find us. The Vintage RPG Podcast is a ham-fisted production. Music by Dega West. Art by Schaefer Brown. If you like the podcast, you should also consider becoming a patron at patreon.com.